Hello. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Um, just getting some stuff set up like normal. Shut on the side there. Let me real quick update my lighting. There we go. A little bit brighter there. Alright. Hi, Nurse. My little kitty's here to visit with me today. She's getting picked on by my other kitten. So I wanted to put her in here. She might eat out in a little bit, but in the meantime, she'll be joining class today. She might make an appearance on the, oh, no, it's my voice changer. Hold on. Sorry, I do have a voice changer. Thanks for letting me know. Oh, gosh, it probably sounds so funny. Let me shut that off. Is that better, Sarah? Let me know. It shouldn't be on at this point. That's actually really funny because I have no idea which one it was on. And so I have no idea how it was sounding. That's hilarious. Sorry, class. Is it better now, Sarah? Let me know. Okay, cool. That's hilarious. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started here. So, I will bring up our class stuff we're going to go over. Last class, we just kind of did, hi there, I answered your guys' questions, and then I went over some of your guys' projects, which we'll probably get to today, going over your, the After Effects version of the, principles of motion design, because I want to give you guys feedback over that. But first, what I want to start with is I want to continue on working on the squash and stretch for the dice. I want to finish that one off. And then I also want to get to the impact scene. And that way on Thursday, right, we can talk about, I've got a little cat here. He saw her tail flying by. That way on Thursday, we can go over the participation questions that are due, and then also go and finish the principles of animation within Cinema 4D with the weight scene, right? I think that let me get this pulled up on, I have to have it in a specific view, so I had to change it real quick. I know, me too. I just love animals in general, Sarah, but I've just grown up with cats my entire life, so I'm partial to them, but I also love dogs. I mean, I was at the Renaissance Fair this past weekend, and there was a rat and cat show, and it was awfully funny. It was very cute. Totally worth it to go to the Renaissance Fair, if you guys are wondering. It was very fun and worth, I think it's $33 for the entrance, but it was absolutely worth every penny. All right, so last time we worked on the dice and the squash and stretch, right? Well, there were a few things that we were talking about that I had to update and go through. And we'll touch base on that when we start here in a second. The bounce, right here, this is the one we're going to talk about on Thursday. And today we're going to go over the heavy and light impact scenes. Now, this one for bounce, we're going to rename it. It's going to be renamed to weight, right? Because we're not really, we will focus on the bounce of it, but we're more going to be looking at the weight of how each one bounces, because we're going to have a heavy, a light, and then we're going to do like a tune type ball that's going to be kind of like cell shaded that we're going to use a deformer on, squash and stretch deformers. So but again, what I want you guys to do is I want you to go through and download these templates. Here's the dice one. Here is the, that one's the weight one. And this one right here is the impact scene. So download these ones. They're set up for you. This one, the dice one right here, is the one that needs the most work on it because we have to set up the scene, which we're going to do here shortly. And then if you guys, like, if we don't finish, right, if we're going through, because we have a lot of participation questions on Thursday, you guys can finish watching any of these videos here. This one right here is going to talk about the dice. This one right here is going to talk about the deforming of the tune ball that we're going to work on. And also we touched base on this class in with the light ball, the heavy ball, not so much. That one we're going to have you guys, I'm going to have you guys complete on your own. And then here, this is just talking about compositing everything in Cinema 4D. Or I'm sorry, everything that you made in Cinema 4D, you're going to composite in After Effects. And these two videos right here were one where Casey talks about how not to use GIFs anymore. We want to start just making small MP4s, right? Because GIFs, the problem with them is that they have a limited bit rate. And so the colors end up getting washed out when you create a GIF. And they just don't look as vibrant. They don't look as good. And so we want to get used to like exporting out small like compressed versions of MP4s. And then also Belle, our lovely assistant Belle, goes through it as well down here. And then again, what I want to see is a deliverable. I want to see an MP4 of all three of them, right? I want the weight, the squash and stretch dice, and then the impact scene, all three of them composited inside of After Effects, and sent as a tiny MP4. I want you to put that in Slack, and then you guys have to comment on at least 5 other students' posts. So this one's a little bit different, right? We change up the deliverables every week so that you guys can get used to following the instructions with it. So from there, let's move into our impact scene. This is what we're going to get into on Thursday's class. I'll just kind of give you a preview of what we're going to work on. Haven't done the heavy ball because I will have you guys do that one for homework, but just a little fun preview there, right? Let me pause this. And I'm going to open up the squash and stretch. Okay. So I am going to actually delete all of this. I was working on this the other day to just kind of try and complete it last week because I thought we would get to it, but I decided to move things around. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to delete this. And we're going to zoom in here. If you guys hear loud noises in the background, I apologize. My neighbors are getting a new AC unit, so I know they're done installing it, but they're cleaning things up right now. So, but before we start working on this, I'm going to hide my camera so that you guys can. I apologize for that flash of the web browser, but I'm going to hide my camera so that you guys can see the entire screen there. So, all right, where we left off, we only had one bounce happening and one squash and stretch, right? Even though we have it happening over 96 frames, right? I want to see a total of 3 bounces. I only completed one of the bounces and one of the squashes so that we could conserve on time. Well, I went through here and initially, let me see if I can do this real quick. Initially, we only had the bounce. If we're looking just at the bounce, the nice thing about Cinema 4D is that you can turn off different properties that you don't want to see at that moment, right? Because you actually can't do that in After Effects, and that's one thing that I enjoy in C4D. So if I go over here to this little eye and I turn off the squash there, it doesn't hide the keyframes for me, but it just shuts off the it doesn't get rid of your keyframes or anything. It just shuts it off in your viewport so that you can just see like one property at a time, right? And so if I play it here, I have two bounces happening. One that goes, starts up high, drops down, stays on the floor for this section, and then comes back up at a shorter height, right? And then it's going to drop back down, stay on the floor, and then come back up to the original height. So if I didn't have this section right here or any of this right here, I would just go to the position keyframes, and I want it to be at the original starting position like value, right? Because we want it to kind of loop. And we have 96 frames here, but it will go off. So all you have to do is select all of those position keyframes, and you're gonna hit Control, and you're gonna drag them over to where your playhead is, right? Because I had counted it out based on where this one ended, where it was flat on the ground, to where it needed to come back up. I had counted how many keyframes I needed in between, moved my playhead here, and then copied and paste those. So then if I'm not sure why it did that. Let me see here. Maybe I did something. Let's play that here. Oh my gosh. There we go. We have like a repeated bounce. Now, the problem here is that I have it stopped. I have it not playing for the full 96 frames, but I do want you guys to have 96 frames, right? So I'm going to drag the playhead all the way over here. And you'll notice then that the bounce still repeats. It just goes past all the way to the 96 frames. So if you do that, right, if you copy and paste those keyframes over here, you'll get a full like bounce cycles, right? It won't end on the same keyframe that it begins, but that's okay because this one we're not specifically making a looping bounce. But then we want to loop the scale, right? Because it's all about squashing and stretching. So I'm going to turn that scale back on. We got to go in here, and I'm going to go back to that 60 frame because that's where we had copy and pasted everything, right? The position keyframes. And I'm going to select the scale, and I notice that the scale starts 2 frames after the first position, right? So I'm going to take my playhead and I'm just going to move it 1-2 frames forward. And then I am going to, this position should be the same as this one right here. And it is, because if I hover over, you'll notice that it says 111 there. And then if I hover over these keyframes here, it also says 111. So these are the same exact ones. That's great. So then I'm just going to take these keyframes, these subsequent ones, right? Minus the position. I'm going to take that scale keyframe, and actually this will probably be easier if no, let's try this way. Control. If you control click on it, it will deselect that set of keyframes for you. And that way you can move ahead. Let's count here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 keyframes ahead of this one, right? So we're on 62, so we'll go to 67. And then we'll just hit Control, and we'll drag the keyframes over to here. And then we should have a nice repeated squash and stretch, which we do. And if you guys want to have it like a full loop, right, you can always, if I move over here, you can always extend the length of your timeline to however many you need to. Because notice I can't click outside of my timeline, but I can drag all of the keyframes, right? So if I wanted to, I could even, if I hit H on here to bring it all up, I could select everything, just the entire die, and then come here and time everything so that it all happens within the same time. I have to pull this one back over because notice when I did that, I still had an extra keyframe right here, right? Because it's playing this keyframe. And so it kind of looked like a hitch in the animation where it was a little bit different. In fact, we have to get it where it's up in the air. So it's not there. That's where we want it to end off at. Ooh, this keyframe right there. There we go. Close to a seamless loop. It's not the quite exact original Y position value as it is in the front. It's actually the second Y position value, but that's okay. Like I said, it doesn't have to be seamless for here. I'm more looking at timing and that you guys have a few squashes or jumps happening. So 1, 2, 3, almost 4, 3.5, I would say, bounces within that 96 frames. And that's all I'm looking for, right? Because that's the requirement on this one, was the 3 bounces. So let's, if I hit Control R, I want to show you guys something before we go and add in like our scene with our floor and all that kind of stuff. That there is already a texture on the die. You don't notice it up here, but if I were to click the die and drop down the menu, this is where the that material is for the die. And then this one right here is where those little the little like divots inside of the die where it shows the number, right? That's what those are. And so we won't have to actually, even though it doesn't show up like it has a texture here, we don't actually have to add one because it is already a texture on top of it. But let's go ahead and set up our scene. Last time I had written, I think I accidentally wrote impact in there instead of squash. And so we want to update it so that it actually says squash. And then inside of the, we want to go to caps here, and we're going to add that bevel size, right? I had already added it. I pre-edited it. Normally it's down at 0, but I just added 3 centimeters. And what that does is it gives it a nice rounded edge there to catch the light once we start adding lights and like the floor into our scene, and it'll just kind of define the edges more of our type. It does not have a texture on it currently. The text is just like the basic kind of, almost, I like to call it like the clay shading. It's called garage shading, but it just kind of looks like a blank clay to me, right? So we'll add a texture onto that too here. So let's start off by adding, first, let's add the floor in, right? So I'm going to go up to the asset browser and I'm going to type in here studio. And I am going to double click the studio backdrop. Now it adds it in here, but it unfortunately is the wrong direction, right? I'm going to close that out. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the coordinates here, and on the H parameter of my rotation, I'm going to hit -90, and that's going to bring that over. Now you can see that there's still some area over here where it's not quite the correct length that we want it. And so you'll just go back into the studio backdrop and you'll just extend the width out of that, and it'll extend it off the screen, right? Now let's add some lights into our scene, because if I hit Command R to just view it, right, it's just all flat. There's nothing there. We don't have any shadows or anything happening on our objects, so we want to add that. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to add 2 target lights. The first target light I'm going to put in there, and I am going to back up here, and let's move this light kind of a little bit over right? We want it kind of above and to the right of the type. So I'm going to, or to the die, right? So I'm going to bring it in a little bit closer. Let's see, that might be a little too close, but yeah, let's bring it back slightly. I'm going to extend the, I want to widen out that, basically like the area of which the shine is happening, right? The light is hitting down. I want to extend that area out. And then I am going to zoom out of here, kind of rotate over a little bit, and I'm going to hold down control and just drag over another light over this way. And I'm going to drop this one down slightly. Now, make sure that when you are moving these lights, you're not moving the, hold on, sorry there. You're not moving the light target, you're only moving the light itself. And then when I made a copy of that light, right, when I hit the control drag, it doesn't add another target. The target is the same target as this light. It's just adding an additional light onto there. If you want to move the target, right, like if your target were not like centered in the area, which in this instance it is, because the die is in the exact same spot, right? Like you can see here that the target is center, like aligned center to where your dice is. But if not, you can just select that light target right there, and then you can move it with the transform, and it will update those lights. Now, that second light, the fill light there, the first light is your key light, right? That's the main light that you want shining on your objects. That one's this one right here. So in fact, we can rename this here. Hit enter and just go to the front and hit key, type in key light, or do it like a normal human. Let's manually put it all in there. There we go, key light. And this one can just be fill light. Now the fill light usually isn't as bright as the key light is. The key light's meant to just highlight and illuminate the entire object, and the fill light is there to just kind of fill in those shadows where it might be a little bit too dark. And that's why we place them kind of opposite each other in direction, right? Sometimes there's a light behind to illuminate the object from behind a little bit, but never is the fill light nor the second fill light. Any of the fill lights are always lower in brightness than your key lights. So we're going to go ahead and select that fill light, and we're going to just drop down the intensity here a little bit. Probably 70 looks okay. I'm going to hit Control R to do a render preview. And that looks pretty good. We're getting a little bit of fall off here where I don't like that it's really dark, right? So let's extend the area of this fill light slightly. Let's zoom out of here. And it's got that fill light selected. I'm going to just drag that out. And now if we zoom in further, make sure you're not selected on that fill light when you're trying to move. Sometimes it will, or any objects. If you try and move and you're selected on an object, either it will try and move the object, or it won't really move at all. So just make sure you click off and then you start to move around your scene. Let's hit Control R to do a render preview and see, and that's a little bit better, right? We could probably increase the intensity a little bit of that fill light to fill in that area a little bit more. And if we need to kind of move the target of the second one over, we can. In fact, I would have to create an entirely different light target for this one, but let's not do that. I just want to see if the intensity will work. Okay, that's a little bit better. It's not that big of a deal right there. And so I'm going to Control S to save. Remember, making sure that you save, always save your project first. Save a version first with your name on it, so that you're not working off the template directly. You've made a copy of the template with your name on it. That's the one that you want to be working from. So if anything happens, While you're working, you can always go back to the original template without having to like download everything again. It's just a hassle that way. And so the only thing about these lights, right, is that there are no shadows being cast by them. So I'm going to select that key light, and down here you see that it says shadow. We're just going to click on that and create soft shadows. You can also do that from this little tab right here. So I'll just click that drop down, and it's shadow map soft, right? And then you want to make sure that you go to the fill light and click on the same thing, shadow matte soft. Now you can also change the temperature of your lights a little bit. Remember, going down or taking the slider and moving to the left will create a warm light, and moving the slider to the right will create like more of a cool light. And so if I were to just take that, I'd probably want to move it down to I'll just even type in here 5500, because I don't want it to be super intense. Let's check that out. It's a little bit too warm for me. In fact, I'm going to drop that down, Control Z to get that back. I'm just going to go to 6000. See, that should be plenty. Yeah, that's great. So we get a little bit of a warmer light coming from this side and like a neutral light coming from the front. If you notice, there's like some banding that's happening in the background here. That is because on your studio backdrop, the sections of it, they're just showing up. The geometry is kind of showing up in the render, and so what you want to do is increase that geometry there. So you'll drop down the studio backdrop, and you'll click on the actual studio backdrop object there. You don't have to continue going down, I don't believe, but let me see here. Subdivisions, we're going to increase that part to like, yeah, 75 should be fine. Since we're going to be doing this in the viewport render, it's not that big of a deal. And that gets rid of all that banding there. You get a little bit happening, but it's not nearly as intense, right? So just a little trick there for you. Now let's add let's add a camera, right? Because we definitely have to be looking through a camera. Now you want to move your viewport into the position that you want your camera to start off or be in, right? We're not going to be animating the camera. It's just going to be still, but we want to make sure that we have a good view of our text and the die, right? The die should kind of be center in your viewport of what you would want to be seeing, or there should be about equal amount of space on each side of the text within that viewport. So let me just scoot that over there. I think the angle's pretty good. I might change the angle. I mean, you could have it dead on if you want to. Like, that's an option, right? But this is just a slightly more interesting angle because you see a little bit more of the geometry with the text, right? So I'm going to just slide it over a little bit. And then we are going to just hold down the camera button, and we're just going to select a camera. It doesn't have to be a target camera, right? Because we're not going to be animating the camera. So it just can be a regular camera. You don't have to change any of the settings in here. The base camera is good to go. Now, remember, if this little tag right there looks like this, right? It's illuminated with a little dot in the middle. That means you're looking through the camera. So you do not want to move your viewport while you're looking through the camera, right? Because it will change the camera view. If you want to make any changes, you're going to click out of that, and then you're going to move. You're going to click out of that and make sure you click off of the camera layer, right? So click off that camera layer so it's not highlighted, and then you're going to move around. But then, so like if I'm back here, right, looking off from the distance, and I click here, it's going to take me right back to that view. So we'll just keep it there for now. Now let's add a texture onto the floor. Last time we were talking about the texture, I attempted to add on like a parquet material onto the floor, and it showed up kind of almost like this really noisy texture, dark. It wasn't fully illuminated, and it's most likely because of the render the type of renderer that we're like actually working in. And so there's an alternate way to actually put that parquet texture onto here instead of just dragging and dropping it onto the floor object. Some materials will just not work well with the type of renderer that we're using, right? So we saw this a lot happen within your guys' real and surreal scenes where the walls would kind of look almost glittery, right? It had like this weird sparkling effect on it. And so what you're going to do is, if you want to have that like parquet floor, you're going to go into your materials, and up at the top, in fact, I'm going to remove the materials that we're not using, right? Because I attempted to drop this on here, and then as soon as I hit that R, or the render view, we get that really noisy image there, and it's not lit up in the back. And so I'm just going to let's remove the materials that, delete unused materials, right? I don't think we should be using this one. Let's take that off of the floor. And then delete this material here. And here, let's see if we can do it right from the studio backdrop. If we go into luminance and double click on the color, that one's not working. Probably the reflectance. Double click on the color there. Yeah, you can change the color, right? So I'm not going to be upset if you guys want to do a color backdrop on this, or if you guys would like to do like a wood floor backdrop. But this is a quick and easy way to just add a color into the scene, right? You can go, this is really extremely saturated. So I'm going to take that saturation down quite a bit here. Ooh, I like the pink. Let's go with that. And then if I hit render view, we get this nice subtle pink backdrop, right? But let's say you did want to add some kind of wood backdrop. The first thing I would recommend doing is, because this is a curved surface, is to not use that. I would do a plane, right? And make sure that the plane is entirely stretched out so that you do not see any of the horizon in the background. Or what you can do is change your camera angle, right? So, for example, let's say we take this studio backdrop and let's hide it real quick. Remember, to hide something, you just double click these little dots here to turn them red. And let's just add a plane in to the scene. And we are going to extend this plane out, right? We want to make it pretty wide, we want it big, right? We want to make sure that when we go to hit this camera view, see, you're going to get the issue of seeing the horizon in the background. You see the horizon line here, and it's just going to end up all black, right? And you don't want that. And so if you do want to use a plane with the floor, I would just suggest moving into your scene a little bit differently when you place your camera, right? So I would do more of a kind of a drastic angle like that, and not rotate it off like that, just kind of more up and down, right? We want the camera facing like more up and down. And I'll accept either or. But so this way, that when you add that the parquet or like the wood texture onto the floor, it's not like curved upwards, which is unrealistic in this type of like environment that we have. Not that this entire thing is realistic, but just in general, you don't see that unless you're like some of those like speed bike, the people who race the bicycles really fast or run in like the circle or whatever in the court, those are kind of curved up, but in general you don't see anything like that. So anyways, let's get back to this. You're going to go up. We're going to create our a different texture, like our own texture this time, or our own material, I'm sorry, for the wood floor that we want here. So you're going to go up to create, into materials, and you're just going to create a new standard material right here. and that's gonna, the material's gonna show up right there. And then I'm gonna double click that, because let's rename this, right? Let's say floor material, so we just know what it is. And then what we want to do is drop in an image of the wood, right? So we're going to go over to the asset browser, and I'm going to type in wood. And we're going to go to, let's see, materials here. Not materials. If I go to all, and then I scroll down, you don't want anything that's going to look like it's on a sphere, because we're creating our own material, right? So you're going to want to scroll down here, and you see all these images of wood. Don't worry about these. These are different bump maps. And it has to do with like the actual texture and creating kind of like ridges and stuff within material. We're not worried about that at the moment. We're just going to grab one of these textures, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to drag it over into the texture of the reflectance. Let's see if that works. It might not be in this one. It might be in a different one. It's actually not in the reflectance, and you can tell because the material doesn't look like wood, right? So I'm going to undo that, and then let's go to color. Let's try it in the color under the texture here. So you'll just hit the color tab, go over here to texture. Let's add it into there. Let's see if that works. Drag and drop. And yeah, that works perfect. So I'm going to close that out, and then I'm going to drag that and drop that onto the floor here. Oops, I did not mean to add it onto all of those surfaces, just onto the plane. There we go. So if I hit Command R, it looks okay. It's way too big, right? So let's increase the tiling here. Let's try 10, 10, 10, 10. Let's do a render preview of that. I would increase it even more. Let's try 30, 30. 30, tab 30. That one's not terrible. It almost looks like a gymnasium floor, which kind of makes me laugh. So yeah, you can do it that way. You can also, like if your material, remember, if it's kind of showing up fuzzy, you click on, or like pixelated, right? You're going to click on that material up here in your material panel. Let's close this for the sake of space. But up here in your material manager, and then you go down to viewport over in this section right there. And then under texture preview size, you're going to increase that, right? So like, let's say it was really grainy, you would put it onto 2048, 2048, and it gives you a much higher definition of the actual texture an image that you're adding onto there. For this one, I'm going to hide this. I prefer the, for me right now, I prefer the studio backdrop. I like it a little bit more. And then I'm going to go back into my camera here. And I'm going to update the, let's update the color of the dice, because you can see when the, hold on, let's see up here. If I zoom in, right here you see the shadows of the dice being casted onto the text. And that's okay, but it'll take, sometimes, you know, with these renders, when you start to add more things in like transparency, right? It takes longer to render it out. So let's go ahead and we're going to just change this so it's not transparent. So we're just going to click on the die in our objects tab, and we're going to click on the texture here. We're going to double click on it actually to bring up the options over here in the attributes panel. And we are going to go under the transparency tab here, and we are just going to, I think we're going to drop the transparency down. Basic. We're just actually going to the basics. Under the basic tab, you can just untick this transparency box right there, and it'll remove that. So then if all of a sudden you hit Command R to see, or Control R, I'm sorry, to see a render preview, you can tell it's not transparent anymore. You can't see anything through it. But if I were to put that transparency on and then hit that again, you can see that it's got like a hint of red, right? And you can always change those colors if I go into the the reflectance tab again, and under the reflectance, or is it the illumination? Let me go under there. Let's see, basic. The ones that are on right now are the reflectance, transparency, and the bump, right? So the color has to be in one of those because these are the only things on. And I believe actually it was in the transparency tab when I was first in there. So I'm going to select that. And the absorption color, right? That's the one that you're going to want to change because it's got already a red color there. So if I wanted to change it to like a blue, I could do that. Let's see if that worked. If I hit Control R to do a render preview. No, that's still a bit of a, that's a red color. So let's double click on that again. Control Z, undo that. Transparency, let's go back in there. Maybe under, see, is it this one? There we go. That's one way to change the color of it. Ooh, very Valentine's Day, right? And there we go. We can increase like that color of the actual dice there. And so you can change the color if you want to. And you can change the absorption color maybe to match more of the color of your actual transparency there. So it just kind of the color. Let's see here. Let me look something up. I want to look up exactly what the absorption color. I'm just looking up what exactly the absorption color does. This is what I'm saying. There's like so much to go with when it comes to materials. There's so many different aspects to a material, right? That comes into play when you're changing things. I can always look this up later and give you guys kind of an idea. The absorption color is how the light will look as it passes through the distance amount. The distance, how far the light will travel through this surface as it becomes more and more absorbed into it. And, you know, I guess that would depend on the density of the object as well. The lower the distance value, the less the light will pass through, leading it to be more opaque. So that's interesting to know. But that is not the one that you want to change. In order to change the actual color, you do want to just change the color inside of the transparency. But notice how it, you know, the shadows that are being cast from the light and through the actual object, the light that's going through the object are casting red shadows onto the type. The only thing that we don't have a material on right now is the type itself, as the text. So let's just add like a plastic material onto that. I'll just type plastic into our asset browser. My mind went blank for a second. Let's see if this green plastic is going to work. Actually, this rough blue, let's just add this onto here. And I'm just going to change the color because I'm not a fan of the blue with the pink right now. Okay, not bad, but it shows up pretty well, right? So let's just change the color of that. to maybe like a light red. Let's keep these kind of analogous color schemes here. Very, 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 very slightly tinted pink, right? Very, very light. There we go. That looks pretty nice. The one thing that I notice on here that I actually don't like is that the caps, like the beveled edge on the type, is coming to like quite a point. I'm going to change that here. So I'm going to go into the text, go to the caps, and then I'm going to drop this to 2 centimeters. And I'm going to just double check on the text type is Roboto. Let's pick a bold. There we go. If I put it in the bold, it looks a little bit better. I'm going to squeeze this over slightly just so it's a little more centered. Remember, we're looking through our camera right now. So, but I like that one a little bit more. It's not so, if you guys have that issue, right, I know that when we were working in the project where we did our names and you guys, there were a couple that had issues where the geometry was kind of like folding in on itself and it was like showing these weird areas where it was empty. Just go into here and you can either make the font bold, right, or adjust the caps so they're not so dramatic, like so defined, right? And that looks much better. There we go. Nice. And so we've got a good bounce going on here, but good squash and stretch happening. I can move this text up a little bit because it happens to be going through the floor. The Q, the bottom of the Q is going through the floor. Or what you can do is you can move the, I actually would not move the studio down because the die is landing on the studio backdrop, like the floor there, so don't do that. Just move the text up. If I play, it looks pretty good. I will let you guys know when you move that text up, you're going to get these weird shadows happening on the bottom. That's okay. I'm not going to be that upset. I'm not going to be upset if this part of the Q is going through the floor either. That's not that big of a deal. But if you want it to look fully like it's all there and it's not missing in some section, I would just move that text up a little bit. And in fact, I can go just slightly more. And then if you want, right, you can just choose the angle, a little bit of a different angle. Remember, I'm in the I'm in the camera view right now, so I'm changing the actual camera at this moment. And then if I hit render preview, there we go, that looks good. That's not bad. Okay, I'm going to save it. And then let's go into the last time. I know we went over our project settings, but let's just hit Control-D to bring those up anyways, to just double check in it. It will end up in the attributes panel here. We have 24 frames a second, 96 frames in length. That should be good there. The scale, not that. Okay, that's fine. Now we're going to go up to our render settings. And we're going to make sure, if you guys do render this in 1280 by 720, that is okay. Just make sure that when you're compositing that inside of After Effects, you have to scale the image sequence, the PNG sequence, right? So it fits. So it fits in the 1920 by 1080 composition that you have. So I'm going to just change this to 1920 by 1080. But if you guys already have it rendered out at the 1280 by 720, that's okay. 1920, 1080. Resolution, remember, don't touch that. We want all frames checked. 24 frames a second, 96 frames, great. We're going to go to save, and let's create a save file here. So I'm going to go to the original here in my Cinema 4D. PNG sequences, right? And I'm going to right click, and then I'm going to add another folder that says squash and stretch, or I can just do SS dice. That'll work. Squash and stretch dice. And then I'm going to double click that, and I'm going to save it there. Make sure it's a PNG sequence, and make sure that you have alpha channel checked, right? Because if the alpha channel is checked, you might have issues with the transparency of your die. And so that could be an issue for you guys if you go to render this out and that's something you see. Now we are in the viewport renderer, right? We're not in the standard renderer today. We're in this viewport one because it's going to be a quicker render. So make sure that when you go in there, it has effects ticked on, but that when you go into filter, it's geometry only, right? So you'll click on that. Make sure the effects are on. We want to see transparency and shadows and reflections. Sometimes what'll happen is when you go to render everything, it'll still show up these lines. If that happens, you just want to, while you're inside of this viewport area, type in NA, and it will remove those lines from here for you. So I'm just going to leave it like that. I think it should work. And then I'm going to hit render to picture viewer. And it should start rendering this out right away. See, it does show the lines. I'm not quite sure why that happens. So let's stop this. Or I guess I'll just let it play out. I think that here, up here. If you guys need to stop the render, just click that. The external render is calculated in a minute. Yeah, I want to stop it. Just click that and it'll stop your render. So I'm going to select all of these and delete them. And then I am going to go back into my project here, and I'm going to type that NA, and it's going to remove that for me. And in fact, that dice, looking at it like this, let's hit the render view again. Oh no, it's a good color. It looked a little bright there, but that's not an issue. So let's just make sure that we don't have duplicates in that folder. I'm going to bring this over here. PNG sequence, the dice, we do. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to select them all, and I'm going to hit, if you hold shift and hit delete, it will permanently delete your items and not put them into your trash. Just a little tip for you guys. And then I am we're going to render this out. Let's double check these render settings. Effects good, geometry only, save, we're in a good spot, PNG, alpha channel, 1920, 1080, 72. 24 frames, 96 frames total. Perfect. Now, there we go. Hey, wow, it is really still bright. So, I might just tick off that transparency. It's not going to really bother me if your guys is super bright like that. I'd prefer it not to be, but it looks more like a gelatinous look than a solid die when it's really transparent like that. So actually I am going to update that. Let's stop this one. Yes, I'm going to go back into that folder, which I have off screen here, and I'm going to delete those. And sometimes what you see in this viewport render, usually it's different from what you actually see in the render. For some reason, it's like exactly the same right now, which is okay. But I am going to select the die. I'm going to go to that material. I'm going to double click on it. And under the transparency, maybe drop down the brightness of it. That looks a little bit better. It looks better in the viewport, right? I'm going to put that at an even number there. Let me see if there's... That should work. Let's try it now. There we go. Looks much better. So if it's too bright, just drop that brightness down within the material of the dice, and you'll be good to go there. And then it's just not showing the entire image, but if I just move this down, it'll show that there for you. And so that is how you do the dice, the squash and stretch with the dice. Again, you'll take these and you will take this entire PNG sequence and you are going to import it inside of After Effects. And then you're going to bring it into a composition where you're going to add it with the other ones that we're going to do the rest of this week, right? But it looks really good, actually. I like the backdrop, the solid color backdrop on there. I like the color palette is really nice. You guys can mess around with your own color palette right now. Just remember color theory, right? I want you guys to start thinking about design when you start coloring things and adding in different elements into your compositions in general, right? Like, and when I say composition, I mean artistic composition, not actual composition that's inside of After Effects, right? I want you to think of the entire image as a whole. Does it look visually pleasing, right? Is it following the rules of design? Because we want to start where, like I said, later on, we're going to be putting these into our portfolio. And so you want it to look the best that it possibly can, right? And if you have a strong design as your base, that's absolutely a positive when someone goes to look at your portfolio. And so I'm going to save this. And that is your guys' first part of the assignment. Let's see here. Are you going to save for me? There we go. And then if I bring this over here, you can see the entire PNG sequence, right? If I were to click on one of these, and then just move through it, you can see it happening frame by frame. Right? Great way to learn to draw frame by frame, too. Is to animate it in a program that automates the in-betweens, and then having an idea of how it moves then, and then you can exaggerate it, right? But now we're going to move to working with the impact scene. So I'm going to, again, open this folder here. I have already downloaded it, and I already have saved it with my name, right? So I'm going to double click on that. And this one's already all set up for you guys as well. We're already looking through, oh, right here, come on now. Oh, you're not going to work for me? I think my one program shut off. Here we go. Yep. We're looking through the camera, right? So with this scene in particular, you don't ever have to get out of this camera view. In fact, it's better to stay in the camera view right now. But we have our text happening right here, and our studio is all set up. We have the F hammer stands for front hammer, and the F ball stands for front ball. Those are the ones that you see on the front side of the text. And then we have the floor here separating the rear hammer and the rear ball. And so, again, as we did with the dice, right? The dice was in a subdivision surface, which is this little icon right here. And if you click on that, it's that one right there, right? The subdivision surface. These ones are not in subdivision surfaces. These are nulls. But when you select it, you do not want to unfurl this and start selecting on the inside. Why not, right? Because of where the anchor points are within these. First of all, it is built this way, right? It's built in separate sections. So that first cylinder that I grabbed is right there. Here's another cylinder. Here's another cylinder. Here's like a torus, right? Which is just kind of like a donut shape. And they're all collected inside of this hammer null. So when you're animating, you want to make sure that you're selected on that null. Don't unfurl these down. Don't even worry about it. you know, or else you're going to have issues. And the best thing about that is the anchor point is already set in between in the middle here, right? Same with this hammer. And then the balls, the front ball, the anchor point is centered in the middle of the ball. So let me, we're going to start setting this up. I want you guys to, you know that it's going to be similar to what we did inside of After Effects, right? When we did the swinging, it's going to start down like this, right? It's going to swing back. It's going to hit the ball. Now, this ball is going to be a light ball. This ball is going to be a heavy ball in the back. And so when this one's going to swing back, it's going to swing through the ball, right? And this one in the back, when this hammer swings up and it hits the ball, when it makes impact, it's going to bounce off, right? So I want you guys to keep that in mind when we start animating these hammers. Start with the hammer first and then animate the ball after. Why do you say that? Because you're going to have to animate the ball, right, once it's impacted by the hammer. So once that hammer collides with that ball, that's when you start animating the ball. So we have to do this in a specific order, right? So we want to animate the hammers first. The front hammer first, then the front ball. Then we'll animate the rear hammer and then the rear ball. Now, we need to set up some materials for the scene here, right? Obviously, there's no materials going on. The intensity of light is rather high right here, but it could just be my screen. My screen on my monitor tends to like blow out the whites. It tends to overexpose it. I need to calibrate the screen right here. But when I look on my other monitor, it looks okay. Like the view of it looks fine. So I wouldn't touch like the intensity of the lights or anything. Now, when we're adding materials on here, you know, like we realized with the real and surreal scene, and then with that parquet floor, right? Some materials work better than others. Some materials work with certain renderers, right? Because we're rendering from the viewport renderer. But there's also the standard renderer, a physical renderer, a redshift renderer, and we're not going to be working in the physical or the redshift or the standard right now. We're just working in the viewport. Again, because it saves on time, right? So if you throw in a texture onto something and it shows up black, or when you hit Control R to do a render preview and it looks funny, just, you know, you can try the technique of creating a second texture there, but I really suggest just not using that texture to begin with. I recommend sticking to a similar like scheme that you're going to see in the example. So I'm going to do a metal hammers and a metal bar. Possibly, I'm probably going to do like a plastic text, just like a white plastic one, or you can do metal if you want, right? And then the floor material, we can throw the parquet on that floor material, and then we're going to put some patterns on these balls, right? Because it's going to be, when it's going to make, when the hammer makes contact with the ball and hits it forward, it's not only going to change position, but we want to add a rotation into it, right? And so we want to put a pattern onto these balls so that we can see the rotation actually happening. Now, let's go ahead and let's put that plastic material onto the text right away. Let's try that first. And we're off to a crappy start with that material. Let's see here. Yeah, it's showing up weird. Let's double click that. Let's see if it's just the color, or I'm going to increase the brightness. No. Let's just change the color to something a little bit darker. And the reflectance. Notice, right, when I changed that reflectance, the color changed right here. It didn't change throughout the entire ball. It didn't change the color of the ball, but it just changed like the highlight, right? The reflected color that's in there. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to go back in here. Let's The color seems to be like very much absorbed by it. Let's just try that one and see if it works better. It might not. I'm going to say it's probably not going to work. Yep, so I'm going to delete that. Let's remove that texture. It turned black because the texture is still on my text right there, so you're going to delete that off. Let's double click this material right here that's already on the ball, the white one, and let's change this one. Let's change the color of this and see if it works. Cool. Still not changing the color, so I'm going to Control Z. Let's go into the luminance channel and try it there. Turn that on. Oh, you don't want to do that. The reason is because this material is on all these other things, so let's not change that. We'll just let's just do a metal one on there. We will do lots of metal textures. Let's try this one. Might not work. Might work. We'll find out. I'm going to hit render preview. I'm just not a fan of it. It's not really reflecting the way I would want. So I'm going to delete that off of here. Delete it from my material panel. Let me see. Let's try dropping it a different one. Let me see if there's a brushed nickel. What is this one? It's not going to tell me. Metal. Let me see. Aluminum brushed. Let's try putting something on the hammer and stuff first. Let's try a brushed aluminum. Let's try this one. That one's not bad, but it's only on this part of the hammer, and that's not what we want. So let's go to that front hammer where it is at, and we're just going to move that all the way up to the null, and it'll add that into the entire camera, or to the entire hammer. And so then I'm just going to hold down Control and bring it to the second hammer, so it adds it on there. And then I'm going to also put it on this bar right there, which is inside of the studio, right? So you can just either open the studio up, grab this and drag it. There. That's not bad. And then let's try and grab a similar one. Let's try this one because it has like a pattern on it. It's not working either. Oh no, there we go. But the pattern's a little big, so let's change the tiling on it. It's kind of neat looking. Not on the bar. Let's unclick there. We're going to change it on the text. Click on there. Change the tiling. Let's try 1010. Render preview. That's too small. So maybe like 5. Let's cut that in half. Ooh. Click there. 5. Tab 5. That's still a little small. I'll actually keep it at the original. It's actually not that bad now that I look at it with the other tiling. Oh, didn't mean to open that. Let's see here. All right, that's acceptable. What is this one? Yeah, let's keep that texture on there. Okay, cool. And escape from that. Let's add the floor, right? Oh no, we're frozen. Let's wait a second until it catches up to us. Might take a second here. Sometimes that happens. There we go. All right. Now let's add this parquet onto the floor. So I'm going to just drag that parquet and drop it here. If I hit render preview, it should be okay. It looks a little bright there, but when I preview the render, it's really not that bad. If your lights are too bright, you can just change the luminance in there, or the intensity, right? You just click on that. You go to the studio, to the light, and then you'll just drop down the intensity. But it's already down a little bit. I'll just drop it down to, or I'll bring it up to 90 real quick. There we go. But it's also, it should be all set up for you guys. You shouldn't have to change anything. This one is Parquet 4 in case that's not, it should be in your guys's template, but if it's not, just type in Parquet and it's Parquet 4, right? And then if you're having issues with the pixelation, right, you'll go into that texture preview size under the viewport of the texture, and you'll just update that. And so I'm going to take this asset browser and minimize it. I am going to, let's get to the balls, right? Let's texture the balls. So I'll select this front ball, and instead of just dragging and dropping a material with a pattern on it, let's create one. Instead of creating just a standard material like we did the last time, we are going to create a PBR material. Now, what does PBR stand for? It is not the alcoholic beverage. It stands for physical, that'll work, based rendering, or physical based render, right? It is physically based rendering. It's just the type of material that will work on here the best. So you'll go to create and you're going to go to materials, new PBR material. And then let's double click on that material to bring up the options. And we're going to rename it, right? So front PBR. We can put front ball PBR. And let's go ahead and we want to we're going to add a pattern, right? But we want to do it inside of the reflectance because that's what's happening there. And down where it says layer color, down in this section right here is where we're going to be adding our pattern in, right? So you want to click on the little drop down that says texture. And it'll be under surfaces. And then you're going to go to, I think it's tile. Let me click on that. Yes. Okay. So again, under the reflectance tab, make sure it's ticked right there. You'll look under the layer color right here, and where it says texture, you're going to click this, and then you're going to go to surfaces into tiles, right? And then if we double click on this tiles, this is where we can make some changes to our pattern that's happening on the ball. So we are going to, we want to have two different patterns on these so they're not exactly the same, right? You can pick the same pattern and do different like color schemes, or you can pick two patterns and have the same color scheme. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that they look, appropriate for especially for the ball, right? We don't really want to see seams, and some of them won't work because of that. But let's first add this to the ball so that we can see it while we're working on it, right? And so we're going to double click here. We're going to make sure we're in the reflectance, and we're going to go back here. And let's pick a different one. Let's try the rings. What does that one look like? concentric rings here, but it kind of gives, you can see like the seam that's happening. Maybe it's orientation if we change that. No, that didn't work. Ooh, randomize color. That's interesting. You can tick that little thing there to change the color. It wouldn't be the scale because it, oh, I mean, that kind of works, but the scale is just going to change, obviously, the scale of the pattern, right? So I'm going to put that back to 100. This one's not terrible, like the pattern, even though you can kind of see the seam there. Others look worse. The grout width here, right there, will change the depth of the black parts there. So if we increase this to like 10, notice that it increased that little section there. Let me see. Would you change the... No, under the sampling maybe. Might have to look for where you would like rotate this texture, because I'm not seeing it actually under this area here. So let's just pick a different one. Let's try radial lines. That one doesn't look great. Hexagons. That one's not bad. Brick's not terrible. Polka dots. We could always do polka dots. Let me see here. You can increase that to make them like smaller, right? Let's undo that. When you start doing that, when you start updating the scale of the pattern, it can have an effect on like if it's seamless or not, right? Because it matters on the way that it fits on the around the object, right? So let me try this. Ooh, a random pattern. That was kind of neat. Interesting. Planks. Sawtooth. Sawtooth is cool. Let's do this one. So I am going to find, let's find a color palette here to work with, right? I'm going to select this. I'm going to direct you guys to a cool place to find color palettes. It is called Coolors, O-R-S. C-O-O-L-O-R-S. And if you click here, you can, I don't want cookies, not those kind of cookies. You can start the generator right here. You guys can make like a free account, right? And you can, the nice thing about it is that when you hit spacebar, it will change the color palettes for you, right? Let's say you liked, let's get to a color palette that looks interesting. This one's cool. Say we like these first 3 colors, but not these last ones. If you just go here to this little lock icon and lock these, then when you start tabbing through, it'll change only these ones, right? Which is pretty neat. And then you get not only the color codes right here, but you get a color name, and then you can copy the hex number. You can drag and move this over if you want to. You can like them and save them to things. You can view shades of those specific colors. Shoot. Okay, there we go. The other nice thing is that, up here, when you hit export, you can save these as ASE files, which end up, these are importable inside of all of Adobe products, right? So this is like a swatch file. And so you can bring this inside of Photoshop or inside of like Illustrator, and you can just import it directly there, or you can do like an SVG file, which works. In this case, I am just going to type the code numbers in. So I am going to move this over off screen so you guys can't see it. And then I'm just going to change the colors manually. I'll keep that grout color for now there. Let's type in, what is the RGB of this? It's a hex number. Do we not have hex numbers in here? Let me see. Oh, that's neat. You can do a color swatch. You can load them here. So I wonder if you can load... Ooh, there's extra swatches in here you can also do. Okay, let's do these. I like this one for this ball right now. Let's just hit OK there. And I will change this one. Oof. I'm going to change it to that color there. Changes. Let's go to those color palettes again. Okay, that's neat. That works. The third one. Back with our theme. Let's change the grout color. Oof, that is rough. I did not like that. Or what we could do is just make it a dark purple, right? We can go in here and adjust that. So it's really dark. A deeper purple. There we go. That works. All right. And so now we want to add one to the other ball. And so we're going to take this and let's duplicate it. I have a little cat in here, which I didn't realize. I might have to get him out here in a little bit, but just select this material. You hit Control-C, Control-V to copy it and paste it. Let us double click on this. This is the copy. It'll have like a 0.1 after it, and that's how you'll know. And so let's change the name to rear ball PBR. And then let's go into, let's close that. Let's drop this one onto this ball back here. And let's change the tiling. Let's change the type of this one. Scales. That one seems to work okay. That one's not bad. Yeah, that didn't work. Ah, duh. It says rotate here. So let's try 45 degrees. That didn't work. 80 degrees. That didn't work. 90. Nah, we can still see the seam on it, so some of them just won't fit well into sphere. Squares? Yeah, disco ball. That works. Okay, now let's change the color palette of this one. We need something. Let's go for like a blue color, right? I'm just going to make it myself. So I'm going to go over here. This is the grout. So I'm going to make the grout just dark on this one. Let's do that. Let's do this one. Let's drop it there. And then bring this down to, that works. More like an aqua, right? Let's color pick there. And then this one's not exactly on. Let's just do a darker version of that aqua. That one works. Okay. Even though that one's not technically showing there, let's change the grout width on this to 5 so it's a little bit thinner. Let's render preview these. Yeah, that works for me. I might try and change the text later, but let's get to animating here. So I'm going to save this, and the first thing we want to do is check our project settings, right? So you're going to hit Control D, and you're going to make sure that it is 24 frames a second, 96 total frames here, which it is. We can even future-proof this and go into our render settings. Make sure our 1920 by 1080, 72 is good. 24 frames a second, all frames is selected. Let's go into the save. Let us pick a different save location. PNG sequence. We will go to new folder. We'll put impact here. We'll hit OK. There we go. Save it there. Make sure that the alpha channel's ticked on. Effects right there. Geometry only. Looks good, right? So we can close out of here. That's all set. The one thing I want to do is change this text to impact, like to say the appropriate thing. So let's go into here and type in here impact. So we're going to have to resize that a little bit. So under the height, we're going to drop that down. Right there is good. That's perfect. 370, even number. And then let's save that. Perfect. I am going to remove that. I really don't like that texture, so I'm going to remove that off of there. You guys can keep it if you want to, but I'm not a fan. And let's go ahead and start animating the hammer. So I'm going to select the front hammer. And remember not to unfurl the object, but we're going to move the playhead to the beginning. And we are only going to be we're going to be animating the rotation, right? This rotation right here. Now, do not rotate this object with the like the orbital rotating gyroscope guide, right? Don't do it this way because it is very easy to accidentally grab a different parameter and then all of a sudden you've got a rotation that's like happening that's really weird, right? We don't want that. So make sure that when you're changing your values, you're changing them within here, right? And in fact, it's going to be, I believe, this one. Let me just double check there. Nope, wrong. It is this one right here. Here's your X value. And so the first thing we want to do is our playhead's over here at 0. We want to keyframe that. And now we're going to move ahead. Let's move ahead. We're at 24 frames a second. Let's go to 12. And we are going to rotate it backwards, right? Because we want that swing to start up here, and we want it to hit that ball from a nice height. So I'm going to type in -115. I'm going to keyframe that. Now remember, if you accidentally hit an incorrect keyframe here, you just right click on it. Like if you accidentally also do that, right? You just right click there, go to animation, delete track, and that will just remove that keyframe for you there. Now we want it to impact the ball. So I'm going to move it another, let's keep the every 12 frames for now, and we'll change the timing as we go. And so this is going to drop down, right, but it's going to swing all the way through because this ball is really light. This is our light ball. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to type in probably like, let's do 65 there because we don't want it to come all the way up, right? We don't want it to go all the way back. And then we're going to go back here. We're going to go 12 more frames. And we're going to swing it back again, but just not as high. So our first one was -115. Let's do -75. Keyframe that. We are going to move ahead 12. And then we're going to move forward. What was our one? Let me see here. 65. I'm actually going to, because remember, as it's swinging with the pendulum swing, the one thing you guys are going to remember with these is that the timing between keyframes is going to be the same, right? When you look at a pendulum swing, the sine wave is very evenly spaced because of how it's like slowing down. It is just losing momentum, right? So when you'll see what I mean when we look at the graph view, but just keep that in mind when you're spacing out these keyframes, right? So in fact, I'm going to drop this down because I'm going to have a few swings here. We'll just keep going and then we'll time it as needed. So then we're going to go, let's see, 10 is 36, 46, 48 right there. And we're going to swing it forward, losing momentum each time. And this one was 65, so we're going to probably bring it down to, let's go to like 35. And then we'll keyframe it there. And then we're going to move ahead 12 more frames. And we are going to swing it back. What was this last one? It was negative 75, so let's do negative 35. Keyframe. Remember, move, playhead, change value, keyframe. That's the order you should do it. So then we're going to move ahead, another 12 frames. And then we are going to type in another value. Let's do 10. 15 maybe. That might look a little bit better. Keyframe, change value, and then keyframe. Move ahead another 12. We're going to move back. What was this one again? Negative 35. So maybe just changing it opposite. So negative 15 will do. Then we're going to move ahead another 12. And let's do 5. And then normally we would move another 12, right? But our keyframe stopped there. So let's select all of these ones and bring it back 6 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. So then from 90 to 96, let's put that at 0. Remember, select the hammer. Actually, let's move this over because we're going to drag it out. So let's do negative 3. Keyframe that. And we'll move 1 forward, and then that's where we'll hit our 0. And we'll keyframe that. But remember, we want these to be, I'm going to land one there, and then this last one, I'm going to take and move out 6 more frames. Let's see. This one should be here. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Looks evenly spaced to me. And so that way the pendulum swing will continue. That looks pretty good. And it continues right off our timeline right there. All right, so we've got that started. Let's look at the F curve of this pendulum swing. Oh, it looks pretty good. This is what I was saying, right? Like evenly spaced from the drop all the way to where it settles down to like no movement, right? The pendulum evenly swings back and forth, but loses momentum as it continues its swing. This generally looks good, but let's go ahead and select all of these keyframes right here. Let's drag and select all of these like peaks, right? The peaks and valleys, so that we have, hold down shift and collect this one too. And we're just going to kind of drag these out. Don't hold down shift, just drag them out. And then that gives us, keep it as straight as possible. That will give us a little bit of a hang as it starts to swing, right? So as I play that, it kind of hangs back. It gives that hammer some weight, right? But that's a really good looking swing. So now let's add the ball into this. Let's factor in that ball. So where is the ball going to start to move, right? It's going to move right when this hammer hits it, which is right about there. It's kind of like in between the frames. So I might have to just update the timing of all of this, right? Let's go to the dope sheet view. Back to dope sheet view. Let's select all of these keyframes here. Let's just kind of move them in slightly so that I want it to kind of not be a full swing there. Let's put this back to where it was, right? And then let's just change this value right here. Right there. Let's change that one. See if that effect. Let's see if that value change will help it out a little bit more. So instead of 65, let's put in there, let's just take off 5 degrees and put in 60. Now, when we update a keyframe, remember you want the playhead right on that keyframe, but this will turn yellow, indicating that you haven't recorded the change. So you want to click on that, and that will record that change for you. That's a little bit better. So that's where the ball's going to start to move. So let's go back to the front ball. We're going to select that here. And what's going to change with the ball? It's only going to be the position, right? The position value of that ball is going to change. Now, which one is it going to be? It's going to be the Z position that's going to change, the Z axis, right? Because the ball's going to go off screen that way. And so we are going to keyframe that Z position. And then it's going to be really fast, right? This ball is going to go very far, very fast. So let's move maybe to the 48th frame here. What are we on here? 19. Let's move it to the 47th frame. 49. There we go. We'll move it to 49th frame. And we will move that Z value. You can just grab this one here, right? And we're going to move that off screen. And then we're going to keyframe that. And let's watch it back. All right. Looks okay. It's a little bit slow. I really want this swing. Swings up. It's going to go through the ball. I think the upward. Let's try this to change the value here. I want it so that the ball, when the swing is down, I want it to perfectly hit, right? I don't want, so I think I have to update the value of the hammer swing. Let's bring this from -115 to -110. I'm going to try small increments here, right, you guys? Because I want to see if that affects where it'll be this swing. I almost want it to be right there to hit at 0. Because you don't want it to go through right here. You want it to specifically. So it might just be the timing. This is why animation takes a while, right, you guys? Because swings back. I don't think that value is going to really mean much. Let's just take this position of the hammer. Let's stretch it out. Let's see if that happens. Let's see if we extend the swing or shorten. Let's shorten that swing. Let's shorten it up. All right, let's hit H to bring this into view. We can always move the ball too. Let me see here. It actually, you know what it has to do with, I think? Let's go to the F curve of the hammer. There we go. Okay. It has to do with this, with the with how far these are. So if I just bring that in a little bit, there we go. That's beautiful. That's at the 0 value. So that is where the issue was. It was because I had too much of an exaggerated curve shape happening here. Like right, when we extend this out, essentially what it does is it has the hammer hang up at these peaks, right? When it swings back and it's all the way back, it's hanging there for a split second and then it starts to go forward, right? And then when it's all the way forward, it hangs there for a split second. This is controlling that, right? And so if that happens to you guys, just come back into this F curve view and just adjust these so it doesn't hang quite as much. And make sure that you're on the, your playhead is on this spot where you want to keyframe the ball, right? So now let's go to the ball, to the Z position of it. Let's go to the dope sheet and let's just move this Z position of this ball over one. So it's on, 18, and then we're going to move this one over to 48, so it's 20 frames exactly, right? It was before, but now, there we go. That looks much better. It's moving slowly. So, let's move it ahead 10 frames. And now let's see it. Much better. Much better there. Okay. So, let's go ahead and look at the F curve of the position of the ball. Let's go to our F curve view. Let's make this a little bit bigger here. And hold down here in the graph, hit H. When you are animating the ball, right, it's an impact that happens. And so we want to, right now, it's easing into the next frame. And that is not what we want to happen. We want it to go fast right away, right? And so we're going to take this and we're going to bring that up so it's dramatic, more of a dramatic curve. So that it's going to go real fast and then it's going to slow up here, right? So then if we bring the playhead over and then we play it, nice. That looks good. Nailed it. All right, and so that quickly moves off screen. Now let's add, it looks okay, right? It doesn't look great right now, and the reason is because there is no rotation to the ball. So you want to work in steps, right? We added the positional change, so now let's add that rotation. And so we're going to go into the dope sheet, and we are going to move the playhead to the point of impact back over to here. And let's keyframe the rotation value of the ball. So make sure that you're selected on that front ball. And the rotation, which one is it? Nope, that's not the right one. So Control Z. That one right there. That is the X rotation, or the X rotation of the ball. That's the one that we want, which happens to be the P right there. And so we are going to keyframe that at the 0. And then we're going to move the playhead towards when the ball is like off screen, right? About like 1 or 2 keyframes before, because the rotation will kind of stop before the ball stops moving. Actually, maybe 1 or 2 after. And then we are going to keyframe that rotation in a negative value, right? Because the ball, that's the way the ball will move. Let's do -50 and see how that looks. And I forgot to record that keyframe. So -50. Let's move that 1 frame after and then do that. -50 there. And then let's record that keyframe. And so now that it's recorded, it should roll. There we go. And it kind of, right, because this is hitting it kind of quick. It's a light ball, first of all, and it's on a slick surface, which is a wood floor. So it is going to kind of skid on the floor when it's hit. And so notice that the rotation doesn't kind of happen as quickly. We're going to change that right now within the F curve. But we've got a good base here. We've got a good blocking out. In fact, I'm going to move back there, and I'm just going to increase that just slightly. So let's do -75. So it's just a little bit more of a rotation on there. There we go. I'm going to save that. And then we're going to go into the F curve. We're going to select the rotation of the ball. And we're going to hit H to bring that up. Now, right, we want that to happen fast. We want the rotation to happen fast, just like we had the position happening quickly, right? But instead of going up, you're going to go down, right? So your curve's going to look like this because it's going to start rotating quick and then it's going to slow down as it goes. And so let's play that. There we go. It's not bad. Let's move the rotation. Let's change this more, a little less drastic so it starts at... And then let's increase. Let's go to that 39th frame here. We're going to bring it back one. Select that, hold down shift and drag. And then I am going to, let's increase that, right? And so instead of going back up in the value, let's increase it here in the graph. We're going to grab that and we're just going to drag that down to, wrong. Grab that keyframe and drag it down to like -100, right? Close, very close. Let's try that now. There we go. That looks better. In fact, you can always add a little offshoot to this too, right? So if I hit H to bring this up, you can either, let's try it this way. Let's go like this and drag it up like this and see if that works. So essentially what the ball is doing, right, is it's moving, the ball is moving this way first very quickly. And then all of a sudden switches to this direction, right? And it's very quick. It happens only, if you look here, down in the inside of the timeline, it's only over really, this overshoot is kind of only happening over 2 frames, right? So you can even extend it out a little bit more. And the way you can do that, control that a little bit more, right, is if I hit Z and I control and double click, it'll add a keyframe value right here. And so then what I can do is I can take this keyframe value and I can bring that up. Take this one, bring it up. And then if I hold down H, we have a more drastic move back and then move forward. And in fact, you can take this and hold down shift and drag it to like only 3 frames. That's not bad. You can hold on shift to break these, right? So that, but you kind of want it to be like a straight so it doesn't have any hitch. You want this area to be as straight as you can between where this keyframe, like between where it's coming into this keyframe and going out of this keyframe, because you don't want there to be hitches in the animation. But that looks pretty good. I would almost leave it like that. And then just kind of do that. Let me hit H again. I liked it the first way without adding the extra keyframe, so I'm going to keep it like that. Oops, let me see here. What did I do before? I just went back a little too far. I was Control-Zing, so I'm going to take that, hold down, shift, move over, and then I'm going to drag that down, right? Let's go to, let's get a nice 140 degrees. Let's try that. And then hold on, hit H. Let's add that overshoot. And in there. And then now, yeah, that looks good, right? It's a quick ball, quick movement, quick rotation. I'm going to move, I actually want this to happen before the ball stops. So let's move a couple frames there, and we're going to hold down shift and just slide it over. Now let's see that again. Let's see if I like that. Yeah, not bad. I like that a lot more. So I'm going to save that. And then let's go ahead and get to the heavy ball, right? Quickly, I'm going to let my cat out because he is clawing at my legs. So just one moment. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. Also took a quick drink there, but let us move on. And so we're going to go back to the dope sheet view and hit H. And let us bring up the back hammer. Let's click on that. You might be asking, like the rear hammer right there, right? And we're going to do the rotation, but you might be asking kind of like, what is the point of all of this? Why are we redoing it again, right? The most important part of this entire lesson is really paying attention to the easing of the keyframes and the shape of the curves, right? Because you want to make sure, you know, the shape of the curves really impacts how heavy or light the ball looks, how quickly and how the movement happens, right? If it happens fast in the beginning or slow in the beginning. Also, if it has that little overshoot, right? And then also like the keyframes, paying attention to the keyframes is important. The spacing of the keyframes and all of the stuff. This is the whole thing about it, right? The easing and the adding the weight, adding like the just essentially like the what do I want to say? Like the attributes of the object, right? It's almost like throwing a ping pong ball versus throwing, or here's a good one, like throwing a ping pong ball versus throwing a bowling ball, right? Obviously the ping pong ball is going to fly and it's going to go bouncing off 10 million things and it's going to continue bouncing forever. It's going to take a long time to stop versus like a bowling ball, right? If you were to chuck a bowling ball across the room, which I highly suggest you don't do, but if you were to do it, it would hit the ground really fast and it might bounce one or two times and then it's going to like just slowly come to a slow stop roll, right? Same with this kind of stuff. If you take a mallet and you hit a tennis ball with it, it's going to fly, right? Or like a golf ball, right? Like hitting a golf ball versus hitting a bowling ball with a golf club, you know? So think of it that way, right? When you're keyframing these, when you're looking at it, when you're watching that motion. And so let's continue on. Select that rear hammer, and then you're going to keyframe the rotation again, right? And it is we want to do the Z rotation, which is the middle one right there. And so, or the P technically. So we're going to hit 0. We're going to keyframe it as 0. And then we're going to move the playhead a few frames ahead to the same spot where this one is at. And we're going to keyframe it at the exact same height back because we want them to like start at the same spot, right? So we're going to go to 110. I'm sorry, negative 110. We're going to change that value. Then we're going to keyframe it there. And then they're going to swing down at the same time, right? And they're going to make impact at a similar time. But instead of we want it to hit where the ball's going to make impact. So right here, we're going to line it up with the other position value of the other hammer. And we're going to swing this down. But instead of going through the ball, right, we're going to stop on the ball because it is a heavy ball. and we're going to bounce off of it. I'm going to hide that text so you guys can see. There we go. And so you want to, in fact, it'll be at a 0 again. So we're going to keyframe the 0 right there, right? So it swings back and it winds up, right? And then it comes down and it's going to hit that. And then instead of going forward, it's going to bounce back again. And so we're going to keyframe this at, let's do -50. We're going to keyframe that. Position change right there. Why is it? Yeah, the rear hammer, right? I don't know why it's selecting that one. That's just the one I had selected. Sorry, guys. So, swings back, swings forward, bounces off, swings back again. Then we're going to go to the next set, right? I'm lining these keyframes. I'm lining the position keyframes or the rotation keyframes of the hammer up with the rotation keyframes of the first hammer, right? Because we're going to have it slow down and do the pendulum swing at a similar time, right? So we're going to move that there. We're going to keyframe it moving forward. So let's select that rotation of the hammer again. Let's go to the properties and let's move it forward probably to, let's go to 40. We're going to keyframe it there. We're going to bring it there. This was -50, so let's drop that momentum by half. -25. Move it here. Drop that momentum by half, so it'd be 20. Move it here. Drop that momentum by half. So let us do, instead of half, let's do, yeah, let's just do 12. Right there. -12. Not a positive, a negative. It's got to swing backwards, right? So change that and then record it. And then move ahead. And then we're going to move to, let's do 10. And record that. Move back. Let's do let's do -5. We're going to drop it a little bit more than half each time. And then I'm going to just move forward 1 because we're going to want to do, let's do 4 on this next one. Because, right, I can't move, I have to manually move these off of there, right? And so I'm going to move up another one. Let's do -2. Keyframe that. Let's move these back real quick. And then we will keyframe it back at 0. The rear hammer. Record at 0. Hit that. And then let's just change the timing of everything a little bit here. I'm going to take this, bring it in slightly to about there. That's about even. This spacing right here is not. So let's move that in a little bit more. It's going to lose that momentum. Let's take these and move these a little bit more. Right, okay, now these ones, let's space these out a little bit more. And then we're going to continue doing this until it comes to a stop. Now, let's look at this. All right, they come to a stop about the same time. Let's take all of these and stretch them out just 1 frame. So it comes to a stop at the same time the other one does, right? So let's, bounces off, swinging down, right? Let me see. I don't know if I like this last part right here. It kind of swings. It gets faster. So let's change the timing of everything here so that it just kind of comes to a head a lot quicker. Let's count this, right? So 8. So then let's go to 28 and move these ones. So it's just a lot of shuffling things around, right? 36. Move these ones in. How many am I going in? 8. Let me see. 52. Right, and the biggest thing is the spacing of these ones are obviously off, right? So then let's go to 60. Move these. 68. I'll hit this in here. 76. We're going to move these ones. Right. That was what was happening. That's why it's kind of stopped too quickly here, is because these are way too close together. And so let us go forward. Wait, what are we at? 76. So let's go to 84. Move here. And then let's go to 92. And then we'll just move this one there. And then finally we will go and move this off. 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 2 frames. 5, 6. There we go. Let's try this. Much better. All right, cool. So let's save that. And now let's select that rotation and go into the F curve. And everything looks pretty good here, except for right here where the hammer makes contact with the ball, right? We need to make this a bounce, essentially, right? So we're going to take this and go back down like this and have it bouncing off the ball. And so if we go back to here, bouncing off. There we go. It looks really nice, right? And then we can take all of these and we can pull those out a little bit. Remember, if it doesn't line up, that's okay. We will. That looks great. That looks really nice. Notice how as the curve goes, like as the pendulum swings over time, right? It's losing its height. It's losing that height as it goes down. So, in fact, I might just drop. I think it looks pretty good there. I'm going to save that. And now let's go ahead and right when that ball makes impact right there is where we're going to animate the position of the rear ball. So we're going to select that. And we are going to change the Z position. So I'm going to keyframe it there. And rear ball, Z position. We are going to move forward off screen, right? And we're going to, because it's going to be, it's not going to go very far, but it's going to take a long time to get there, right? It's going to go probably about to there. And let's keyframe that position change. So that we, and hit H right there so we can see this, right? And then we're going to want to update the curve so it goes fast and then slow. But the difference is we're not going to have such a dramatic curve like that first one was, right? We want it to be a nice, easy. It's going to go faster, but then it's going to take a really long time to slow down into its final resting position. So let's play it here. Not bad, not bad. Let's make it a little bit faster there. And in fact, it kind of moves a little too far. So let's hit H on here. Let's grab this and then bring this down, right? We don't want it to come as far. It's probably good. And it's going to stop a lot quicker. So it's happening over too much time. So we're going to grab this, hold down Shift, and just drag it. Let's drag it to like 72 frames, right? There we go. It overshoots a little bit. So we'll just take that and drag that down so it's not so dramatic. Nice. Not bad. Happens a little bit too fast for me still, so or takes too long. So I'm going to bring that to 60 frames. Nice. Okay, so I'm going to save that. And now let's add that rotation in. So we're going to go right to where the impact happens again. And we are going to, where the point of impact is, we're going to select that rear ball. And we are going to animate the rotation. And so let's move to where the ball stops moving forward. And then we're going to put in a negative value. So let's put in around negative 115. Let's try that. Keyframe that. All right. Not bad. Now we just need to adjust the easing of it, right? Of that rotation. So let's save. Hit the rotation of the rear ball, hit H to bring that up, and then let's adjust this keyframe, or this curve right here. So it's just like that. Now let's view it. Nice. That looks really nice. Right? There we go. We have our impact. This is probably one of the easier ones to do out of all of them. It's fun. It's definitely a fun one to look at. It's a fun one to do. Make sure, you know, like the biggest part of this, right, is to make sure that when, let me pause this here. Hit H. Let's look at the dope sheet view, right? Hit H there. Is when the balls make impact, or when the hammers swing down here. So they start up, they swing up, and then they swing down. That when the hammer makes impact with the light ball, that hammer moves through the ball, right? It goes past it. And then when the hammer hits the heavy ball, when it makes impact with the heavy ball, it bounces off, right? We really want to see that. And it's demonstrated within the curves of the rotation of the hammers. So if I click on those, and then we go to the F curve and we look at them together, right, simultaneously. In fact, let's move this one. Let's select the rotation of the hammer here. Control, click that one because we don't want that one. Nor this one. Control click these first two because we don't want to select those. And then these ones, let's move this over too so that they line up at the same spot, right? Because we want them to swing down and make impact at the same time. But like right when they're making impact right here, this one's swinging through. It's not, let me see the rotation of the hammer. Yeah, no, they're on the same ones. This one, though, swings all the way through, and this one's bouncing off, right? And you can see it again inside of the F curves when we go in here. Swinging through the ball, bouncing off of the ball. And then the subsequent rotations as it follows, like slows down, right? It loses that momentum there. And then if we add the rotation in of the balls and the position of the balls, let me see. Let's say H there. H, bring it up. These should always look opposite. The rotation, the position, the curve of the position, the Z position of the ball, and the curve of the rotation of the ball, the X rotation, right, should look opposite. They should be moving opposite of each other. As far as this one's going to go up and over, and this one's going to be like more, the curve is going to be downwards, right? And so make sure that when you're looking at your curves, they look like that when you're animating. When you're changing those properties. Now let's put that text back on. And let's add let's just create our own. Let's take this texture off of it. And let's try that plastic texture again. Let me see if I remove the other texture, if this plastic one will work. Plastic. Let's try the rough. It's just not working well with the lights or the renderer. I'm going to delete that again. Delete it off of your, remember to delete it off your layer. Let's try plastic diffuse one. Let's see if that one will work differently. Yeah, that one works much better. So I'm just going to change the, under the luminance panel, texture. What is this one? This one's odd. No. I wonder if I can change the color through here. No, that doesn't work. So let's just delete that. Let's just try this plastic texture. And double click on that. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Let's change the color here. We can have it slightly tinted, like a cool color. There we go. That works a little bit better. Let's view it in the render. Oh, it's going to be one that doesn't work well with the type of render that we're using. So let's delete this. Let's go back here. See, it's just back to the drawing board, back and forth and back and forth. Let's try this green texture. See if that one works. Too shiny? Nah. Reflectance? Nah. Let's try and create our material for the, let's try it. Let's try our own. Let's create another PBR material. Physically based rendering material. And let's text. We'll put it text PBR. Let's double click on that. And under the reflectance layer, let's try and add a color. I just want like a tinted blue, very light. Let's try that. Drag that. Ooh, back. Drag and drop onto the text. Ooh. You can see like the grain that's happening right there, right? So let me see if I can change the resolution on that in the viewport. By a higher resolution, let's see if it does the same thing. Yeah, so let's just pick a different texture again. This is the story of my life, moving back and forth. And just picking out different textures. Let's just try this black one. That's not going to work either, I can tell right away. How about this one? That's not going to work either. Let us just pick. Please work. Hi. Let's go back to those metals. Metallic. Let me try a different kind of metal. Maybe something slightly more, maybe this like metal grip. Let's try that. Ooh, cool. Yeah, okay, that works. And then let's just change the tiling on this. Let's do 5-5, just see what it looks like. All right, I tried to hit, let's try and do a render real quick of that. It might not want to do it. Let me close this out. See if it'll do it now. There we go, a little bit better. That's awfully reflective. Let's change that back down to 1:1 of the tiling. Okay, now let's try that. I mean, that's not terrible. It's not my favorite. The reflectance, reflection strength. Let's bring that down to like 58. That's a little bit better. You guys could do this texture. That's not bad. It's really reflecting the floor a lot. I'm going to, in fact, bring the text down a little bit more so it's touching the floor almost. Slightly up. Right there. I'm going to try and find... We've got a few more minutes. Let me try and find one more texture and see if I like it more. Let's just try this bronze. Okay, so the metallic ones seem to be working the best. You guys can kind of choose in there. Let's try a little bit of a rougher bronze. I might like that the most. Maybe not the color of it, but... Ooh, how come I didn't see this one? Let's try this one. So, we didn't get to the... to your guys' projects for the principles of motion design and After Effects right away today, but we'll get to that at some point, right? And if I don't get to it by this weekend, what I'll do is I will get to it. I will just put the notes inside of your, like inside of Canvas, like I've been doing for other things. Yeah, I don't like that. Delete that. Let's go back on that one. Yeah, whatever. I'm just messing around at this point, but you guys kind of get the gist of it. Let's try this one. Did I do that one before? I think I did. Let's delete this. Delete that tag. Yeah, I think I like this one the best. It was the one that we used originally on it, so I'm just going to go up to here, materials, or to edit, delete unused, and I'm going to save this. So yeah, like I said, we didn't get to those today. As far as the principles of motion design for the After Effects one, again, I will go over that either next class if we have time, and if not next class, then we will go over it either next week, or I will just go ahead and put in notes for you guys manually. There's several that are still missing there, so please remember to get those in as soon as you can. I do want to mention something. I sent out an announcement last week, towards the end of the week. Let me go here and show you guys. Under announcements, make sure that you check this, because about the submission comments, right? First, there must have been like some kind of update inside of Canvas, and when I put your comments into there, it doesn't show up right away for me. Like it used to list the comments and I could see them back then. Now I have to download them, and so that's a pain. But underneath the where you submit it, right? Where you submit the assignment, it will say download all comments, submission comments, or something like that. If you click on that, you can read the comments in there that way. So just, I apologize if I didn't see any kind of questions that are on there. But like I said, I'm going to keep this in mind moving forward. And then here, let me put myself on camera again. And then as far as the real or surreal project, just some general comments for everyone regarding that project. If you turn in an MP4, if you only turn in an MP4 or your Cinema 4D files, that's incorrect, right? The deliverables specifically asked for you guys to turn in both the C4D and the MP4 files. So if you're missing part of the assignment, you're not going to receive full credit, but if you submit the rest of the deliverables, I'll update that so you do receive full credit for that. I decided to go over those last week on Thursday, which was 216. So if you guys want to know what your feedback was to fix those, go ahead and watch that class and go over where I go over your projects. But overall, good job. You guys did a good job on those overall. That is talking about this, that I gave you guys some extra time, so please use that time wisely. As far as this is the biggest one right here, missing assignments go. We are approaching spring break. It's coming up, and I've been mentioning that the first round of revisions are going to come up, whether it comes up before or after. It will be within either the week before spring break or the week after, right? I've been really lenient on deadlines as of right now. There are some people who still haven't gotten anything in. If you want to receive credit for projects that are not turned in yet, I want you to turn those projects have to be submitted by February 3rd, which is, I believe, 2 weeks from now. I'm sorry. So 1 week from Friday. So you have a week and a half to complete any kind of missing assignments, right? There's going to be a hard deadline. The reason I'm doing that is for the revision rounds, there's going to be a hard deadline, and in order to have revisions, right, you have to have that first assignment turned in, that initial assignment turned in. And so I'm going to have to give you feedback on those assignments. And so if you do not have the original project turned in by the time we do the revision, by the time we start the revision rounds, and unfortunately you guys aren't going to get credit on it, and I'll have to put in a 0, right? And so that is something to think about. And if you're missing things, like you might be missing one project and all the rest you've turned in on time and you've had revisions and you've done your revisions on those projects, and then that's fine. You'll just be deducted points from whatever projects are missing from your revision round, right, from that project. So very important part of that announcement, this section right there. If you don't listen to anything else, listen to this section, right? Personal notes. Over spring break, I will be available, but I just might have limited availability. If you have class assignment questions, reach out to me sooner rather than later, right? Or to Belle. I might not be able to answer your questions right away between the 10th and the 19th. I will be in town. I will not be out of town, but I have to I'm having a procedure done. And so I'll be recovering from that procedure. So I will try and get to them as soon as possible if you guys ask those questions. If you guys happen to have questions over spring break, that's okay. Still ask them within Slack, or you guys can email me. I'll try and check it at least once a day, and if I can, and if not, twice, every couple days. I'll check it and try and answer those as quickly as possible. If you ask those questions within Slack, you are more likely to have those questions answered quicker, right? Because Dr. Farina, who used to teach this class, will also be overseeing that. So he'll be able to help answer questions as well as your other student, your peers. So other than that, you guys have been doing a good job. Keep up the hard work. I appreciate all the hard work. And the one thing I will say about this class is you guys are very communicative. A majority of you, will reach out to me when there's issues, or will let me know if you guys need a little bit more time on things. And that is awesome. I wasn't necessarily expecting that right away, but I appreciate it a lot. So continue that communication with me, and, we can work things out. But other than that, I hope you guys have a good night, and we will talk on Thursday. So you guys enjoy.